Oh man, this is gonna get so many dislikes that I'm just tempted to turn them off. On September 9th, 2003, Outkast released their most popular album, Speakerboxx / The Love Below. This was a double album with Andre 3000 and Big Boi doing half the songs each, as they were in a tumultuous time and couldn't even be in the same room. At this time, the biggest song of their career was released. Hey Ya, Andre 3000's pop hit, was the most influential and popular song of the past couple decades, and is a cheery anthem for any time of the year. Well, at least this is what Andre wanted you to think, because as the song continually has an upbeat tone, the lyrics are much more depressing. The most iconic lines of the entire song are these. Why yo, are we so in denial when we know we're not happy here? The depressing tone from Andre as he's coming to the realization that he's in a relationship neither party wants to be in and neither are happy. But with the upbeat instrumentation, Andre knows this will go over the heads of the listeners, so he follows up with, y'all don't wanna hear me, you just wanna dance. Hey Ya is one of the most iconic songs due to its reverse dichotomy when it comes to the lyrics and the instrumentation in the song. Remember this, because it will be important, I promise. So, Avatar is a 2009 blockbuster hit about Jake Sully traveling to Pandora to learn from the native people in the area. Being the highest or second highest grossing film in box office history, depending on this or Endgame will be added back to the box office in any given week, Avatar is one of the most iconic and memorable movies of all time. Or we would assume, because Avatar and its near $3 billion box office number and ridiculous budget, you would think would get more than just dads fondly looking over Avatar and want to see more of the universe. So I want to look at why this movie is so forgotten about, so odd that it became this popular, and how anti-American something can be and still looked at in a positive light by Americans. Spoilers ahead for Avatar. Avatar's an interesting movie to look back on because it's not that old, only being its 12th year since its release, and it's not looked at as highly as others of the time. I personally hadn't seen it since I was 10 years old, and frankly I only remember the weird hair sex scene, the weird tree hip gyrating scene, and the very end with the army dude being stabbed in the neck. This near 3-hour epic is so odd to me for so many reasons. But first, I want to look at James Cameron as a director. James Cameron is an auteur through and through, with his main staples being massive budgets, strong female characters,
hey wait, don't!
an affinity for the color blue, massive CG endeavors, and breathtaking aerial shots. James Cameron was known originally for Titanic, and all these elements are in there, and Avatar is no different. I mean, the people in Avatar are blue. James Cameron has a style that he likes to stick with, and what is so odd to me is that he decided to take a page from Michael Bay's directing book. Every Frame of Painting did a fantastic piece on Bayham, and how Michael Bay has an over-reliance on visual effects, explosions, and cluttering the screen. This is why Transformers is so difficult to remember besides robots fighting, Shia LaBeouf exists, something with glasses, and Megan Fox is in it. Michael Bay fills the entire screen with clutter, and in the meantime also includes dialogue, music, and other aspects to make the scene of the utmost importance.
Okay, my back pocket! You got 10 back pocket! Left cheek! Left cheek! Left cheek! I can shoot! Hey, peace up!
Have you heard?
But the problem is, he does it with every scene, and when you have every scene appearing to be incredibly important, no scene stands out or is important. So James Cameron decided to copy this, and I don't really know why. First off, I don't want to say this happens all the time. There are standout scenes and there's a balance, which we'll get to later, but the middle section of the movie just is filled with too much information. There's an entire wiki dedicated to the fandom with the language, characters, animals, mythology, and so many more things, and I'm not going to waste my time learning all the names of these things, so bear with me as I will be naming them with the very informal names like Panthers rather than Thanator. Thanatar? Thanatos. As I will be naming them with the very informal names like Panthers rather than Thanatos. I want to use this scene as an example. So Jake is trying to tame his pterodactyl because once you bind it with your hair, then the bond will be forever. So the pterodactyl will choose him when he tries to kill Jake. Jake struggles to capture it, but when he tames it, we get to see him learning how to fly and see the magnificent CG scenery, ironic score, more from the Sideways video. And while this is happening, Jake is talking, we don't have time to process all the information. And while we finally get a grasp of what is happening, we cut to Jake and Terry talking, where we can get a breath. But oh wait, now we're flying together and we see more scenery and we're talking, and then oh shit, there's this thing that's about to attack them, so a chase scene happens, but they're okay because it only lasts 25 seconds and now we're on to the next thing. Did you get all of that? The difficulty with packing the screen with so many things is that your brain can't do all these things at once, so you don't remember anything. Add all of that with the fact that they're building this complex society with so many creatures, characters, places, and a language you don't know, and you have to combine it with an actual story. I struggle enough remembering names of people I know as is, and this is just another level of impossibility for me. So, I could stop here. I got to a reasonable answer to my question I asked before watching. Why did this movie become so popular? I can reasonably say it has to do with the fantastic cinematography, revolutionary CG, and overcluttered scenes to make the audience not entirely remember what happened, leaving the theater talking more about the CG and the shots in the movie rather than the content itself. But we both know that's not where this ends. Like I mentioned, there is a plot stuck in this madness. Now, is this plot revolutionary? No, and I thank God it wasn't, because this would have been another Tenet, but with an unknown language and a new culture on top of it. So the plot involves Jake coming to replace his dead brother to learn about the Na'vi people and report to this scientist, but also report to this military strongman. Yes, I don't know the name of the military strongman, bear with me. Jake learns about the culture, but continues to give crucial information to military man as they want to take the very expensive resource, unobtainium. Put a pin in that. Along the way, Jake starts to like the people and gets accepted into their family. He falls in love with Natiri, and they have weird sex. Put a pin in that. He is then kicked out of the village after bulldozers destroy the trees and then come to destroy Mango Tree. Put a pin in that. And Jake and the scientist lady are in prison for helping the Na'vi people. Badass terrible actress lady breaks them out as they try to save the scientist with this tree and ritual, but she doesn't survive. Put a pin in that. The Na'vi get all the other clans to group up and fight against the Sky People. The Na'vi kill most of the Sky People, and Jake kills the military man as he shows his true speciesism. Put a pin in that. Jake becomes a Na'vi with another ritual. Put a pin in that. And then the Sky People are forced off the planet. There are a lot of things I left out that I could talk about, like the fact that Jake took his brother's spot without any training, and it doesn't seem like he has any emotion when his brother is burnt, or the fact that Jake breaks direct orders and then gets no repercussions for that. But I don't have the time to go through everything I want to talk about, and I don't want to spend another 15 minutes on each thing. I do want to discuss my favorite scene from the movie for a second, because it's very well done, and the rest of the video makes it seem like I disliked Avatar more than I actually did. So this scene right here is after Jake has been isolated in the floating mountains and has started to get more connected with the Na'vi people. Jake is sitting in an empty room with the bars in front of him in a blue tinted room. The imagery shows that Jake is trapped with really no good options to get out, and the blue hue, although Cameron's favorite color, fits perfectly with the scene as we soon realize that the Na'vi people will be betrayed. As Military Man enters the frame, he walks towards Jake and grabs a chair to sit beside him and meet Jake at his level. This is not only the military leader trying to meet Jake halfway, but also shows that they're on different paths as they're sitting next to each other, looking across rather than towards each other. Jake soon learns that what he has given as information will be used against his friends. The military man meets him halfway to let Jake know that Jake can leave and his job is done. But Jake has become swept up with the culture and cares for the people. As the military leader realizes this, he exits the same way he came in, symbolizing that Military Man hasn't changed his stance and will do whatever he can to get the results he wants as Jake stands his ground and stays in this trapped situation. It also perfectly shows what will come when Jake and Military Man meet up head-to-head multiple times later, as Jake is the one thing in the way from the United States exploiting the Na'vi people in Pandora. I just wanted to put that out there to let you know that this is actually a very well made movie, but it just kind of gets lost in the sauce. So without further ado, why it's so odd Avatar was incredibly popular. Avatar is one weird movie, and there's no denying that. From the time Jake became a Na'vi, I knew as a kid this is something else. So let's look at pins 2, 4, and 6. First up, weird sex with Neytiri. This is the one scene that I think everyone didn't remember, then someone reminded them this happened, and now they can't forget about it. And Disney Plus apparently decided that they didn't want people to remember part of it, so they took out this part of it but left the rest to try to make people not be completely weirded out by the fact that they had weird hair sex. The Na'vi people use this as a link to connect with the animals and nature to communicate with the world, but it always weirds me out when they make out. They do their hair thing, and then the next scene is about how Jake and Neytiri linked up, so she's chosen her husband, basically being a symbol for sex. I get that they used it to create a connection with horses, trees, and the pterodactyl, but please stop. Pin 4. Another weird one where they bring the naked scientist and then do this ritual to try and have the tree save her. She sustained injuries from too long ago, so she couldn't survive, but again, this is the second highest grossing film of all time, and they did this? Finally, pin 6. Jake does the same ritual and becomes Avatar Jake for the rest of his life. Okay, so all of these pins are connected because of the weird rituals. Sideways has a fantastic video about how ironic this soundtrack is, and it's revealing how odd these choices are. So the original idea was to have the music sound like nothing anyone has ever heard of, almost like they were trying to make it sound alien. So they made this alien music no one had ever heard of, and Cameron shot it down. It was too weird for his movie, and so now we have this music that is very westernized to make it sound what westernized audiences think foreign music sound like, but it sounds nothing like actual foreign music. So this just adds more to the point that these 3 scenes I mentioned are yet again this idea. They have westernized ideas where Jake and Neytiri make out and then have sex with their hair, but then you try and move their consciousness to another body with a very odd ritual. This is so different from what Western audiences are used to, and it just makes me wonder why they decided the music was too alien, but these weird as hell rituals stayed in. I have to reiterate the fact that this is the second or the highest grossing film of all time. There are loads of scenes that are relatable to Western audiences, and maybe that's why the movie is so popular, but then you have scenes like this, and it makes you wonder how this isn't just another The Shape of Water where audiences don't want to see it because it's too weird and too out there. There becomes a point where we get to a threshold where audiences are turned off by the oddities, and somehow this movie doesn't cross that threshold. I like that this is so weird because we normally get cookie cutter westernized movies, but audiences didn't care about this part of the movie? Did they just forget about this part because of the clutter? The scenes are cool and shot very well, and they're so incredibly different from what I expected to be the second highest grossing film. It's just, they're so different that I thought Western audiences would completely want to not ever see anything like that ever again. Firing.
Bingo. Good shooting, Ace.
So Avatar is just so odd it became so popular because it's very anti-American. The box office did a larger percentage from international markets compared to domestic, but $750 million in the US is no small amount. For it being so widely viewed by Americans, it's odd that this movie is so overtly political and yet accepted as not controversial. Yes, some conservatives bashed the political agenda it had, but clearly people's pockets were the driving factor, and they were complicit to the political agenda James Cameron was pushing forwards. Like I alluded to the introduction to the segment, let's look at pin 3. I think this scene is so clearly anti-American, especially in today's climate, and I'm surprised at how accurate it is. This ties into pin 1, but I'll also look at that one after this a little more. So the Na'vi people are sitting on a massive amount of unobtainium, and the very American sky people want this. The peaceful Na'vi people do not want to be moved out of their home on their home planet by invaders and want to protect nature and their culture. The very greedy, very American people do not care about destroying the environment and gassing the Na'vi people to force them away from their tree. The Na'vi people who were peaceful and are being invaded now attack with bows and arrows and literally do no damage, so Military Man decides to fire back with rockets as they kill the Na'vi people and destroy Mongo Tree. This is just so telling because Black Lives Matter protests are the same thing. Now, don't even go into the comments and say the riots were worse than the Capitol insurrection, you dumbasses. One was based off of a hate-filled, baited man spewing lies to trying to protect his ego, while the other was decades of injustice towards an entire race after years and years of peaceful protest doing jack shit, so action was the only way to get the attention of the nation. So, back to Avatar, the Na'vi fight back because it's their home and land being impeded on, and they fight back, not even hurting or affecting the American sky people. And the Americans see this very non-threat as a threat and decide that genocide is what they need to do because of money. Even after the Na'vi people are forced away from their land and have to seek refuge at a sacred place and the evil corporation has complete control of the unobtainium, the Americans still attack the Na'vi people. Now, the movie has the Na'vi people amassing numbers to attack, but the end result is the Americans going on the offensive to attack the Na'vi and their home to yet again show another image of peaceful protesters trying to protect their basic rights against the capitalistic oppressor. Now let's go on to pin 1 before I go on another rant. So, the unobtainium is the reason they're here. It probably originally was to study the people, the planet, but each kilogram costs $20 million unrefined, and the Na'vi people live right above a shitload of it. So this is where it goes from, Evan, you're making this up to look like it's anti-American, but you're grasping at straws, to, wow, this is incredibly anti-American. So Evil Corporation wants this resource because they can make money because Earth has put a price on unobtainium. But let's do some simple economics. As the resource is more scarce, the price increases. The more you have, the cheaper it is because the demand won't be as high and the cost of entry decreases. Think gas prices. As there's more gas available, price decreases. When a pipeline is hacked, then prices shoot up because there's a scarcity. If this company wants to get all the unobtainium on Pandora, they will lower the price because it will be less scarce until they run out. By forcing the people out of their homes, it goes into a new discussion of Old West versus New West economics. Old West would say, to hell with national parks, we want resources. Views don't make me money. The New West would say, preserve the land, increase jobs with tourism, and save the environment, also saving money and keeping a steady influx of money rather than a one-time payment of resources. So what does the Evil Corporation do? I mean, of course they decide that this ancient culture that they are invading upon doesn't matter, and the people's well-being, natural resources, and incredibly beautiful nature and homes don't matter because of money. And so they destroy the biggest tree ever because they have no soul, and when the Na'vi people fight back to protect their home and ancestry, they retaliate with gas and fire, causing the deaths of possibly hundreds of Na'vi. And quickly before I forget, the man tells Jake Sully,
Hey Sully, how's it feel to betray your own race?
you all are gonna say that this isn't racist, it's specious, but honestly, who cares? The message is there. It relates with everything else being said in this film. Like, Jesus Christ, I know some people will say that this isn't a representation of their values, and they would never say this, but I was told that I was going against my own race by multiple different people because I defended LeBron James for speaking out. That's not a joke. That actually happened, and I will not mention names, but yikes. This is one of the most American things said in the movie, to go against your own race, because we got these racist dumbasses wearing swastika masks, we got white supremacists driving through protesters, and we got a racist dumbass running the country for 4 fucking years.
If you count the legal votes, I easily win. If you count the illegal votes, they can try to steal the election from us. If you count the votes that came in late, we're looking at them very strongly, but a lot of votes came in late.
This movie is the second highest grossing film of all time and somehow is looked on so fondly, even though it's confusing to remember, weird as hell, and very anti-American. America is the face of capitalism, as they're not willing to have the most basic human rights such as universal healthcare. They're also the country that calls Black Lives Matter protesters terrorists and respond with all lives matter, even though that's the point of Black Lives Matter. They're also the country that destroys foreigners' monuments, cultures, and sacred places for money and protection. As Childish Gambino said, "This is America." The American way of having the massive corporation being subsidized and protected by the government to value money over lives and culture while being led by an inherently racist man is just such an obvious attack on America now and the America of then. James Cameron was not holding the punches with this movie. Avatar is the hey-ya of movies. James Cameron masks this very political statement with incredible imagery and CG, and knows his audience won't even notice it because they will be overstimulated with crowded imagery and vast information of this alien culture. Like Andre 3000's pop hit, James Cameron's Avatar is one of the most influential and popular pieces of media in the past few decades, and masks the meaning with the reverse dichotomy of information. James Cameron makes this upbeat, cheery ending to a beautiful movie, and knows, like Andre, that the audience doesn't want to hear him. They want to just watch the movie. Or as Andre said,
Y'all don't want to hear me, you just want to dance.
I was on TV!